Are you looking for inspiration on a daily basis? Well, check out Deal to Heal Tees. With our inspirational tees, you're sure to find something that will inspire you. Just go to dealtohealtees.myshopify.com. That's Deal to Heal Tees. Get some inspiration in your situation. Wear inspirational tee and be inspired all day. That's Deal to Heal Tees at dealtohealtees.myshopify.com. Hi guys, if you're enjoying this podcast, then I know you'll enjoy the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. I'm your host, Earnest James. And on my podcast, my guest and I discuss topics and ways to help us to heal in every area of our lives. I believe that everyone can and should live a life that is whole, healed, and healthy. And therefore, I'm on a mission to help people to deal, heal, and fulfill, to deal with their problems, heal from the pain, and to fulfill their purpose. So check out our podcast. We're on Google Podcasts, Spotify, or even on Audible. And if you want to watch the podcast, check us out on our YouTube channel at Deal to Heal with E. James Podcast. Until then, see you soon. Welcome to the Girl Dad Discussions podcast with E. James. We believe that the relationship between a dad and daughter is one of the most important relationships in a woman's life. Our mission is to promote the daddy-daughter relationship by spreading the voices of girl dads to the world and give love and support to all of our dads and their daughters. Let's get to it. Let's tune in. All right, welcome to the Girl Dad Discussions podcast. I am your host, Earnest James, and I believe that everyone can and should. Nope, that is wrong podcast. I'm going to do the whole intro to the other podcast. Let me start off with welcome to the Girl Dad Discussions podcast, where, excuse me, where our belief is that the relationship between a father and daughter is one of the most important relationships in a young woman's life. And therefore, our mission is to promote the daddy-daughter relationship by spreading the voices of girl dads to the world and give our love and support to all of our dads and our daughters. We also started this podcast with the mission to combat the narrative of the absent father and the fatherless daughter. And so when you come on this podcast, you're going to hear fathers and daughters sometimes that's on talking about the relationship of the father and the daughter, because we believe, again, it's one of the most important relationships in a young lady's life. So also make sure you guys are following us and checking us out on all of our social media pages for the Girl Dad Discussions podcast, as well as check us out on our new YouTube channel, the Deal to Heal Podcasting Network, formerly the Deal to Heal Podcasting, the Deal to Heal podcast page. But now that we have multiple podcasts that we want to bring you guys, we changed it into the Deal to Heal Podcasting Network. So make sure you guys go there and subscribe so you can not only watch this podcast, but you guys will also be able to check in with our other podcasts. The Girl Dad Discussions podcast is on there, as well as the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast is there as well. So our product of the week, as you guys know, we are a self-sustained podcast, and one of the ways that we stay on the air is by bringing you amazing products for you to purchase. And so our product of the week is our purpose journal, as well as our purpose planner, because I believe we should journal in order to keep track of where we've been in our lives and where we are, as well as plan for our future. So make sure you guys get your copy of our purpose journal, as well as our purpose planner. The links are in the descriptions below below this video. So make sure you guys go and check that out. So you guys will be able to get that, right? So today, just like any other day, we are blessed with the guest, Mr. Scott. How you doing?
I'm good. Thank you for having me on, Ernest.
No problem, no problem. Thank you for being here. Yeah, I want to say thank you for being here because you could have been doing anything else with anyone else, but you're here with me and my listeners. We definitely appreciate it. So do me a favor, introduce yourself to my listeners and tell us a little bit about who you are and what it is that you do.
Okay. Well, first, let me show you. I am a girl dad too, proud girl dad. And Ernest, I tell anybody listening, my life began on August 21, 2002 at 12:36 a.m. when my daughter Anaya Kathleen Scott was born. I don't know what life was the day before, but I sure know what life has been ever since. And I'm a proud girl dad, right? And this summer has been one of the best because I got to see my baby graduate from college, dual degree in German and neuroscience. She just became a Fulbright Fellowship awardee. So she's now in Germany as of yesterday, doing neuroscience research. And she'll come home next summer and start medical school. And also this summer, I won my 5th Father of the Year award. 5th. And somebody might say, well, wow, okay. And well, the thing is, Ernest, and anybody who knows me know I did not have a dad in my life for one day. Never. But I decided that I was going to do something different. I was going to break curses. And my curse was I was not going to bring a child in the world, right? Not to know my presence.
Right.
Not to know my presence. And I've always been a participatory dad, right? And I got divorced 12 years ago when my daughter was only 10. And when I got divorced, I played even more of an active role in my daughter's life because why? I've been out here in the dating world and I've dated and been in relationships with women who were fatherless.
Mm-hmm.
And when a woman does not have her dad, she has a different set of standards. She has a different way of her different outlook on life. And I wasn't going to create another Black woman with daddy issues, not on my way. And it's paid off, man. It's paid off. So I really thank you for inviting me. And I thank you, Ernest, for having this forum where especially Black men can come on and break the stereotypes of that we're not around for our kids, because we are.
Yeah,
we are.
Yeah. And you mentioned something that really is the reason why I started this podcast, because you mentioned about being divorced and being out into the dating world and coming across other women who were fatherless daughters.
Yes.
And that's kind of how this podcast even came about. Long story short, I again myself was divorced and found myself kind of reflecting on my life, and I realized that every woman I ever dated was a fatherless daughter. And so me being a girl dad, and having 5 sisters, and my dad was in my life, right? So we were raised with my dad and my mom, until my mom passed away. My dad is still here. And so just taking that initiative and that mindset, which is one of the reasons why I started this podcast, because I'm like, I was raised with a dad who raised all 5 of my sisters, and then I have a daughter who I'm very active, a participant in her life, and she just turned 21 now, and so I'm like, I want to do something to, to show that we're here, girl dads are here before Kobe, because of course when Kobe came around and started doing his thing, everybody's like, oh, girl dad. I was like, dude, I've been doing this, you know what I mean? But that being said, I just wanted to make the world know that there are fathers, there are girl dads who are here that's very active in the lives of our daughters. And especially, I definitely wanted to give respect to you, like myself after the divorce. You know what I mean? It's like, look, just because that didn't work, that didn't change my relationship to my daughter. Just because my relationship with her mom didn't work out. You know what I'm saying? And
That's right.
so I'm very passionate about that part. You know what I'm saying? Because I would say relationships come and go. You know what I'm saying? And unfortunately, sometimes marriages come and go. You know what I'm saying? But that does not change your responsibility as a father to
That's
your
right.
child. You know what I'm saying? And it shouldn't change the relationship that you have with your child. You know,
Absolutely.
sometimes you have to fight for it, but that's what it is. You know
Uh,
what I mean? If we got to fight, then we got to fight for it. You know, but that's your responsibility to be in that fight, you
that's
know,
right.
for your child. And then you mentioned something about your daughter going to Germany, and I shared this with you before we start recording that I actually took German in high school. You know, I was forced to take German in high school. I didn't want to take it, but I ended up having to take it. But I probably only know like 3 words now. You know, high school is a long way away.
Right.
My daughter's out of high school. That's how long it's been since I've been out of high school.
Absolutely. And look at us, man. We're the new generation of we look good for our older age. You know what I'm saying? Because we
Oh,
take
right,
care of
right, right.
ourselves.
Yeah, yeah. And I was giving you props on your beard because I had to cut mine off, and but it's growing back. You see all the stubble. But
Right.
yeah, definitely, definitely. So let's go back a little bit. And you mentioned about your life starting, you know, the day that your daughter was born. And so you kind of answered it a little bit, but I'm gonna go back and ask you anyway because it's the question that I always ask. What does it mean for you personally to be a girl dad?
Okay. Well, I didn't get into what I do for an actual living, my occupation,
Mhm.
but I'm a licensed clinical social worker. And I've been in this industry since I was 23 years old. And I just celebrated about 3 weeks ago my 31st anniversary of being
Okay.
in social services, right? And you can imagine what I've seen as a social worker and as a
Mhm.
therapist and as a manager in this industry. And I've seen abused and neglected children, right? I came into this occupation, my first case was a 12-year-old boy who had been molested by his mom's boyfriend. So imagine being a 23-year-old and that's the first case you get on your desk. And before then, I was a young guy, and at that time I had about 4 god kids. So I'm a man who loves children.
Mhm.
Altogether, I got 11 god kids. They were getting me ready for when I turned 33 and became a biological dad.
Right.
But in being a social worker, I saw the cause and effect of when children aren't loved and aren't loved right, especially by the two people who brought them into this world. So it's almost like a teacher or a preacher or a cop that when you become a parent, you're a little bit more acutely mindful about your children because you've seen what abused and neglected kids have been through. And you don't
Mhm.
want that story for your child. And sometimes we go a little above and beyond, but because we know how important it is. So the reason why I'm the girl dad that I am is because, wow, I want my daughter to have every advantage in the world. And she has, man, even though I've been divorced. My
Mhm.
daughter, and I'm proud, and I mention it on social media, because I like being the role model or the blueprint or the billboard of Black fatherhood.
Right.
By the time my daughter was 21 years old, Ernest, she has been to all 7 continents.
Mhm.
And when I ask people, just in general, how many black kids under 21 that you know personally have been to all 7 continents. Not one person has ever said, "Oh, Khalid." No, well, maybe one person has said, "Yeah, I know one." But they're like, "Well, yeah, Khalid, I know one, your daughter." And I'm like, how do we have this technology and our kids still haven't traveled the world? But it's things you put as a priority.
Yeah.
If you look at this back wall, those are my degrees and diplomas as well as my daughter's degrees and diplomas. That's my wall of accomplishment because you have to see it to perceive it and believe it
Mhm.
and achieve it. right? So I raised my daughter to know infinite possibilities. And then I want to add this. When I was growing up fatherless, I had two dads. One name was James Evans Sr., and the other name was Heathcliff Huxtable. Those were and I think they were a lot of people's dads. You know what I'm saying? James taught me to be firm and devoted to your family and get the job done and survive. But in September of 1984, right, this show premiered on NBC, and it wiped away all of my thought processes of being father and family. And you know what that show was, right?
Mm-hmm.
The Cosby Show. So you saw a Black father who was a doctor married to a beautiful Black lawyer.
Right.
And they had 5 precocious, beautiful kids who had 5 different personalities. And they parented as partners. So when Claire was firm, Heathcliff was just sit back and like, okay. And then I'm going to reinforce what mom said. And he talked to his kids. You know, James used to grab his belt buckle. Like, do I need to further this discussion? But Heathcliff, he said, come on, sit down so we can talk this out. And so then it was like, wow, you take the best of both dads. And that's what I've tried to be when raising my daughter. And it's worked, man. My daughter graduated from Kenwood High School here in Chicago, number 3 out of 430 students during the pandemic. She got a full ride to Amherst, which is the number 2 liberal arts college in America. $80,000 a year school, Ivy League type school. She went for free. You know what I'm saying? I'm a poor Black boy who came from a 17-year-old mother who was a high school dropout. So no one can ever walk up in me and give me excuses, because I defied all the excuses. Why did I do it? Because Anaya needed the best role model of manhood that she can get, and it's been working just fine.
Yeah, and you know, so you were mentioning about the good times, right? Good times in the Cosby Show, and definitely, I grew up on them as well. And being from Chicago, I think a lot of us knew James very well, right?
Yes.
We knew James very well. But I think even with that, and when you mentioned it, I started to think about it. Even in my own family, I think my reality was a mixture of both of those, right? So my dad definitely had James's personality, and his last name was James, but but he did. My dad definitely had James's personality, and my dad worked for the phone company. Back then, that was a good job, but this was like before cell phones, right? So everything had to be hardwired. You know, the guys climbing up on the poles and all that. So my dad did that, as well as being a mechanic. He was a jet mechanic in the service. But my mom was actually going to school at one time to be a lawyer, you know, and then she got into writing. She wrote a couple books and things like that, and ended up going into ministry, you know. But that dynamic with those two shows really was kind of how I grew up, you know, not just watching the show, but kind of living it too, with the examples that I had of my dad and mom. And like you said, my dad was the same way. My dad used to always say, and well, he don't say it necessarily now, because we're all adults, but he definitely used to say when we was growing up, respect me and love your mother. And that was his thing. And so whatever my mama said, that's what went. You know what I mean? It's like, look, your mama take care of everything. So that's how we wanted it, right? Because if she had to call my daddy, you know, so you know what was gonna happen. Like
Absolutely.
you said, James come in and grab a belt. You know what I mean?
Right.
So you already know what's gonna happen. Like, so don't make me call your daddy. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So definitely having that, you know, just thought about that when you mentioned those two shows, because I definitely grew up on them. But I want to ask you another question. Just going back, because you mentioned that you were married, right? At the time when your daughter was born. So let's go back. How did you even find out that you were going to be a dad? You know, at that time, were you guys planning, you know what I'm saying, to have children, or just like, hey, we not everybody I would say we wasn't not planning, you know what I'm saying? Because we definitely was going through
Right,
the
we were doing a grown-up dance, right? That could happen, right? Absolutely.
right.
And the wonderful story about that, I found out on New Year's Eve, and I was shocked, you know what I'm saying? And she came in the living room. She said, "I got a surprise for you." And she put it in a box, and then I opened it up and I saw this little stick thing, and I'm like, "Well, what is this?" And I'm like, "Wait a minute, I know what this is. The two lines." And I was like, "Oh, wow, I'm about to be a dad." 11 God kids in, and I'm 33 years old. And maybe I was thinking, maybe it ain't going to happen. I'm just going to have to enjoy my God babies. And
Right.
now I'm going to be a dad. And from that day on, man, I was mentally preparing. I was mentally
Yeah.
preparing,
Did you guys?
and I was excited, man, very
Yeah.
excited.
Did you guys find out the sex of the baby right away, or did you guys wait?
Oh, I needed to know. I needed uh, 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 I needed to go shopping. You know what I'm saying? And I had to prepare the bedroom. So I needed to know, and we needed to pick names. You know what I'm
Right.
saying?
So you was pretty much like speed full ahead once you found out, like, all right, let's go.
Let's get with it. Let's get with it. I went on, and the thing is, man, I made it a journey. I went on every doctor's appointment, every ultrasound, Lamaze class, you know. And I remember I was at work when her water broke, and my ex-wife drove herself to the hospital, which was down the street from my job, Little Company of Mary. And as soon as I got the call, 5 minutes later, I'm walking into the emergency room, and it was like 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And then I'm just like, man, God, when we gonna see my baby? 12:36 a.m. She's in my arms, and it's just and as my baby was coming out, Ernest, it was like, thank you, God. Thank you, God. If my life didn't have purpose before, it does now. And I'm so excited, and even when my ex-wife was pregnant, I remember, and I always put this up every year. I used to love chili from TLC, right? And I'm part Arabic. So I'm Arabic and black. And chili is Arabic and black. And then my ex-wife is very fair skinned with long hair like chili. And I said, God, please let my daughter look like chili. You know what I'm saying? So, I just had the image, man. I'm telling you, I was prepared, and God didn't let me down. Head full of hair, you know what I'm saying? And I remember when Dr. Johnson, when my daughter came out, cut the umbilical cord and they wiped her down, and they was like, okay, ma'am, here's your, I said, give me my baby. I wanted to be the first to hold her. I wanted to be the first to hold her. And then it was only for a couple of seconds, and then I handed her over to my wife. But I just wanted her to feel my presence right then, right there. And we've been close as thieves ever since. Yes.
I love it, man. I love it. I love it. So once you guys had the baby, and you bring her home for the first time, and those, first moments and days and weeks, just the beginning. How was that experience? Like you said, you already had 11 god kids, and I'm sure you probably seen them from when they were babies and holding them, but now you're not only you hold your baby for the first time, but
Right.
then you bring her home, and it's like, okay, now it's really all on me. You know what I'm
Absolutely.
saying? So
Absolutely.
how is that? Just even the relationship of having your daughter home. You know what I'm saying? And just your experience as just being a new father with the whole thing. How was that for you?
Right. Well, I remember staying in the hospital till 4 o'clock that morning, right? And I was on an adrenaline rush, of course. I didn't want to leave, but I knew I needed to. So I went home, took a shower, pulled out the vacuum and started cleaning up. And even though my house was immaculate already, I'm like, I got to get it extra immaculate. And I lived in a place called Lake Meadows on 31st and King Drive.
Yeah.
And, it's an apartment, in a high-rise building. And I just remember getting the apartment ready. Ran to the store. I had a Jewel's right down the street. And I ran to the Jewel's to get the baby formula and baby, stuff, right? And then, I was making phone calls, letting family know she's here. And I just remember being so excited. And then, that afternoon I picked my mom up and, went over to the hospital and, other family members came up there. And then the next day she was ready to be discharged because it was a healthy birth. Mm-hmm. And I just remember putting the car seat in the car and I drove 10-2. Usually when I drive, I'm driving like this. I was like driving correctly, like you did in driving school, because I didn't want no accident. And I just remember that, like, wow, God, this is what I've been dreaming for. Beautiful wife, beautiful daughter, and the beginning of this new chapter of my life. And then I remember prior to having my child, I had a buddy who had 2 daughters. So when I found out I was having a daughter, I remember I told my buddy Steve, man, I'm having a girl, man. I'm going to be, a father of a daughter. And he stopped me and he said, Khalid, do you know how important that is? I'm like, yeah, man, I know how important it is to be a dad. Absolutely. He said, no. Let me be very specific. You are going to be the first man she loves. You are going to set the stage and set the tone of her relationships with men. If you get it right, your daughter will win. If you get it wrong, she will lose every time. So take your role as a dad, especially of a daughter, very serious. Well, 22 years later, look at that back wall. I took it very serious. And I want to bring this up, and please forgive me for being so long-winded.
No, you're good. You're
this
good.
is really important. When I got divorced, right, I didn't do what a lot of us brothers do. And you know what this is. How it seems like some men, when they divorce their wives, it's almost like they divorce their children.
Yeah.
Not on my watch. As soon as I got divorced, I put me and my daughter in both individual and family therapy. And I remember we did 3 sessions in family therapy, and the therapist was like, Mr. Scott, to be honest, I don't need to be doing therapy with you and your daughter. To be honest, I need your wife, your ex-wife, to come in the sessions. And I offered, her, because I was going to pay for it. And she was like, no, not interested, not now. But I made sure that me and my daughter did therapy so then we can go through the grief cycle, right?
Yeah.
And that I can let her get her voice out. Because, sometimes kids don't want to share things with parents. But I wanted her to be in front of somebody who was unbiased to talk and get her pain out. And then, like I said, and then when I was going through divorce, I fought for 50% custody. So I would give my daughter 2 weeks out the month while her mom would get her for 2 weeks. And it worked out perfectly. You know what I'm saying? I was not going to be one of those dads, and I'm not trying to offend no man. Your situation is yours. But I know for me, I wasn't going to deal with every other weekend. That's only 4 days a month. I wanted my daughter 14. Her mama got her 14 days. Because remember, I was there when she was born. I held her first. And I was never going to forget that. And it's funny you brought about the girl dad thing, that happened once Kobe and Gianna died. I remember so many men posting their pictures of them and their daughters. And I told somebody this is going to last maybe 2 weeks. See, I had always posted pictures of me and my daughter on social media. And it did. It lasted 2 weeks. And then you saw these men taking down the pictures because they had to go back to normal life. It's something about when your daughter knows that you're special, that she knows she's special to a man, her dad.
Right.
Because then again, it sets a tone that if a man doesn't treat me special, I'm going to have to reconsider something and not spoil me like my daddy would have, but to treat me like I'm of value.
Right.
And listen to this, Dennis. I got so many friends grew up with or without dads. They're in their 50s making the poorest choices of men that you wouldn't believe. And you would think, why would somebody in their 50s who've been through marriages and relationships wouldn't get the concept of I deserve better? But as a social worker and a therapist, I've learned we are stuck in our dysfunction. We are stuck in our toxicity.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying to help my patients learn, break the bad habits, break the bad patterns, and live a good life. And when your children see you live a positive life, remember you're their first role model,
Mm-hmm.
then they pick up and then they start trying to emulate what you did. Anaya saw my degrees and diplomas on the wall, so she knew she had something to work for. Even though I got about 30 trophies in this room, Anaya has about 50 trophies in this room because she saw her, and both me and my ex-wife have master's degrees. So she saw Black excellence in the house. Even though it was two different houses, she still saw it. She still saw it. Those 7 continents, I took her to have. I took her to half the continents. My ex-wife took her to the other half of the continents because we value travel.
Mm-hmm.
We value exposure. Let me ask you, Ernest, how many Black kids do you know under 21 who've been to 7 continents?
I don't know. I don't think I know any adults that have been to 7 continents, let alone the children.
Right. So, and why is that? We got money. We got cellular phones where we can go and plan trips. But again, dude, we've been taught to stay stuck.
Yeah.
Stay in your community. Most kids I know, they on the only trip they've done with their parents is where, Ernest?
Wisconsin Dells.
or what's the other place that we take our kids?
Great America. If you're in Chicago, I know that's down the street.
Okay, but go a little further. What is the number one place we take kids?
Disneyland over
Yes.
Yeah, I was
yes.
one of those.
Yes. I know some parents, they take their kids every year. They've been once or twice. Go somewhere else. Take your kids to Miami, to the beach. Take your kids to New York to see a Broadway musical. Take them to Texas and see a rodeo. Take them to LA to meet celebrities. Take them to Seattle, Washington to see where the first Starbucks coffee house is.
Mm-hmm.
It's such a bigger world. I still take trips with my grown daughter. This summer for her graduation and my 55th birthday, I took my daughter to Paris and London. $3,000. Exposure, man. Exposure.
And I think that exposure piece is really big. And also me and my daughter had started doing the we call them daddy daughter trips. We started doing them a couple of years ago. But that exposure piece is very important because, you know, we're both in the Chicago area. I'm originally from Chicago too. Now I'm just right across the state line in Indiana, in Northwest Indiana. But I remember coming out here and I helped start a church. Me and a pastor friend of mine started a church and
nice.
Our church, we ran for 10 years, right? We ran for 10 years, end up closing down, you know, after the pandemic, because the pandemic just messed a lot of stuff up, right? But I remember going to Gary, Indiana, and, you know, we started our church there and just meeting so many people who had never been outside of Gary, you know. Mm-hmm. And I used to tell people, I used to talk to them and I would say, well, have you been to downtown Chicago? Which is literally 30 minutes away. And they're like, no. And the Metro, which is a train, comes right, it's like right there. It comes right through Gary and goes right downtown to Chicago. And I was like, it's like $7. You know what I mean? to get on this train and go to a whole new world. You know what I'm saying? but it's just like you said, it's that exposure and never even being, or having even the mindset to actually go outside of your community. Or if it is, especially like a lot of people from Gary, they when they move out of Gary, they say, "I'm moving out of Gary." They move to Indianapolis, which is the state of Indiana. And
Right.
so it's like you just moved to a bigger Gary,
Right.
but it just shows how much that exposure, even if it's just exposure in your mindset and even a thought that let me step out,
That's right.
or like I said, even going to downtown Chicago is 30 minutes away. You know what I'm saying? It's like you don't even have to go like I mean, definitely I would want you to go like around the world, but
Right.
we don't even have to start there. Let's just go an hour away. Just get on the
Absolutely.
expressway and just drive in one direction an hour and then see where that takes you. You know
That's
what
right.
I'm saying? And that could just take even that 1 hour away from your regular surroundings could open up your mind to something, because you end up running it, especially on the express coming off the expressway, because you got the visitors centers and things like that that just expose you to everything that's available in that state. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? But just that having that mindset to even think outside the box and step outside of your regular surroundings. I think that's something big for a lot of us.
That's right.
As parents too, because sometimes the parents the kids can't go because the parents ain't never went. You know what I'm
Absolutely.
saying?
Absolutely.
So yeah,
Absolutely.
so somebody, like you said, somebody has to break the curse, and or even if it's not a curse, but just to break the mold and open and expose everyone, the family, to something different.
That's right.
So I want to ask you. So there's one question, and the reason I asked this question um, is because I always want the podcast to be something that someone can learn from, right? I always think about the fathers who are new fathers, that is coming on, and they're new fathers for the first time. And so I want it to be uh, informational as well as educational, for them too. And so one of the stories that I share about myself is when my daughter was younger, she had a daddy daughter dance,
Yeah.
and I had to work. And so I said, well, I'll miss this one. I'll catch the next one. And she's 21. There never was a next one. You know what I mean? I mean, there was, but it wasn't one that we went to. And so I kind of missed that moment, and so that's something that I regret myself. So I always ask the dads that come on, especially the ones who have adult daughters like yourself and I, who definitely has been through some years and some trial and error and things like that. What may be something that as a father that you may regret that you may have done or didn't do with your daughter, and even not necessarily regret, but something that you can look back now and be like, maybe could have did that a little differently, and so that it was a different outcome.
Absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. Because as a social worker, I learned some of the best and most successful people had testimonies,
Mm-hmm.
had trial and tribulations that made them stronger, that defined who they were, that taught them lessons so that I wouldn't make this error ever again. So as a dad, right, um, I wish I didn't have to get a divorce,
Mm-hmm.
but it takes two, I used to have only child guilt because my daughter's the only child. But hey, my ex-wife was like, nope, you got one. So, and I wasn't going to be that dad to have that man who was going to have multiple kids by
Mm-hmm.
multiple women. So, and the thing is, because I'm a social worker and a therapist, I'm a communicator. So I've always set Anaya down and talked to her about everything, and I took moments to tap in. I remember she was a young girl. We was at a Bulls game. And this is when Kim Kardashian was married to the basketball player, Chris Humphries.
Mm-hmm.
Well, his team was playing the Bulls. So my daughter was like, oh, that's Kim Kardashian's husband. And I'm like, wait a minute, Anaya, you know who Kim Kardashian is? She said, yes. That night, I talked to her about the birds and the bees. Because if you know who Kim Kardashian is, more than likely you heard what made her famous.
Mm-hmm.
And that took that moment to say, Anaya, there's a good way and a bad way to know about love and romance and relationships. Her way isn't the optimum way of doing it. Making a video of your love making with a man that goes viral. So see, every chance I got, I showed up and I showed out. Man, I've been to 5 daddy-daughter dances. I remember something you said about work. I was sitting here, Anaya was 4 years old at the time. I was sitting here at my desk and my buddy was sitting on the couch behind me. I just got into work and I was a manager, had a bunch of paperwork to do, but I'm sitting at home doing the work. Well, my daughter came in to hug me and I gave her a kiss and I said, well, Daddy, I said, Anaya, Daddy's talking to Uncle B. So going back upstairs with Mama. So I guess my daughter must have had a sad look on her face and my buddy picked up on it. He said, man, you just dismissed your daughter. I said, I did what? Because I wasn't thinking about it. He said, can you see that sad look on her face? I said, Anaya, come on back down. And I sat her on my lap. I never did work from home again. Because be real clear, nothing is more important than my kid. Nothing. Nothing. And I've worked 2 jobs for the last 25 years. Work never got in the middle of my child. I remember I was running late for one of her dance recitals. I got there because I was stuck in traffic. It was at Chicago State University, and I was coming from the west side of Chicago. I was stuck in traffic. When I got in, my daughter ran up to me and she was crying. I'm like, Anaya, what's wrong? Daddy, I didn't think you was coming. Why would you think that, baby? I've come to all your stuff, but you're late. I said, well, baby, Daddy was stuck in traffic. Now, here it is. I had never missed anything. I was 20 minutes late, and that almost broke her spirit. So imagine the kids who daddies have not shown up. And also, unlike you and other people, I didn't have a daddy. So I know how deep that feeling is when your dad ain't in the audience. So again, but that deficit in my life spared me to win 5 of these. So it's absolutely nothing that I would have done over with, because the flaws and all made me a better parent. And I want men to hear that. I want women to hear that. Anything you've been through, good or bad, if you let it, can make you better.
Yeah.
Look at President Obama and look at our future president, Kamala. Both of them dads were not in the home. But look at their greatness. Because you can choose a different outcome.
Right.
Choose a different outcome. And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Okay, cool, no problem. And that's why I asked, because again, I want this to be educational. You know what
Yes.
I'm saying? And I always, so my very first guest was a friend of mine who was having, at the time when we recorded his episode, his daughter was like 2 weeks old. You know what I mean? His first
Wow.
child, 2 weeks. So he was brand new dad. And so I started with him on purpose, so
Good.
that from each episode, I always want to think about him, right?
Right.
He was on the beginning of this journey into girl dad, into fatherhood too, for him, because it was his first child too, And so I always think about him, and so I ask these questions so that the dads that's like him can learn from those who are further down the line, what to do and what not to do, And so definitely taking your steps that you've taken, to definitely do a lot of things right. You mentioned some things before, but I'm gonna ask you anyway, because on the flip side of that is, what is one of the things that you think is one of your biggest accomplishments as a father?
I role modeled what appropriate manhood looks like. A role model what appropriate manhood looks like. So she would always be clear. And I'm going to tell you, Ernest, I hate football. I hate basketball. I don't eat that many chicken wings. I don't drink beer. Why am I saying those things, Ernest? I don't have a bunch of women. Why am I saying those specific things, Ernest?
Because those are the stereotypes.
Correct. When I went through my divorce, my daughter saw those tears come through my eyes because she saw that, man, this is not only hurting mommy, but it's hurting daddy. Every time I had to do the switch, every other Friday, she saw the sadness in my face when I had to say goodbye to my baby. Right? I wanted her to see what real manhood looked like. She saw me go to work 2 jobs all of her life. She saw me take her to go and get pantyhose and homecoming dresses. She saw me sitting in beauty salons for 4 and 5 hours, waiting for her hair to get done. When my daughter came on her womanhood at age 12, I'm the one that picked her up and took her to Target and bought all that stuff. And then took her out to dinner to celebrate the beginning of her womanhood. I've taken her on those trips. That's what real manhood looks like. And let me show you something. My daughter's a Leo, and if you know anything about Leo women, they're very strong-willed, right? And I'm a Cancer, so for me, I have a big heart. Cancer people, we're emotional, right? And I'm a social worker. And I remember my daughter fell out with one of her closest friends, and I was like, Anaya, can you show your friend some mercy and forgive her for what she did wrong, and try? She said, Daddy, no. I gave her chance after chance. And Daddy, I'm not like you. Whoa. Come and sit down, baby. Tell me what that means. She said, Daddy, I watch your friends use you. They get free counseling sessions from you. You always forgive them when they do you wrong. They walk away from you, Daddy, and then they come back months later apologizing, and you always take them back in. Daddy, I don't want people to take advantage of me like that. And I said, wow. So I said, that's how you see it, huh? So I said, well, Naya, let me educate you. Daddy's a social worker and a therapist, right? She said, yes. So I had to learn to see stuff beneath the surface. I had to learn as a father, a husband, a son, and what I do for a living, to always see the bigger picture, not just what's in front of my face. So Anaya, those friends, they were struggling. But because I was the friend who told them the truth, the whole truth and nothing but, sometimes people ain't ready for you to hold the mirror up in front of them. And that's why they had to run from me. But you said something very critical, daughter, didn't you? They came back and apologized. And then when I call you a friend, you're a friend. So let that be the takeaway. Not that, oh, Daddy, people use you, but that show mercy and grace, and that's your blessings. Now, she saw it a different way. She thought people were using me. I said, no. I said, Naya, look how blessed Daddy is. I'm blessed because I try to bless others. So see, every opportunity that you go through is a teaching opportunity. I remember another story I'm going to share with you. My daughter was vacuuming because I keep an immaculate house. I'm an ex-Army soldier. Grew up as a Muslim. My mom has the neatest house in the hood, right? My daughter was vacuuming because I believe in teaching her how to clean the house and cook. So she was vacuuming one day. She was pre-adolescent, adolescent. And she was like, man, Daddy, I can hardly wait till I become a doctor. And I said, why are you saying that, Naya? So I won't have to vacuum and clean up a house. I can pay somebody. I said, Naya, really? I said, Anaya, do me a favor. Grab a chair and come and sit next to me. I was sitting right here on my computer. So I said, Anaya, I'm going to move over. I want you to type in Arnold Schwarzenegger. She was like, who is that? I said, type it up and I'm going to show you. She typed in Arnold Schwarzenegger. I said, who is he? He's an action hero and he's the governor of California. Right. So then I said, Anaya, do me a favor. Type in Maria Shriver Kennedy. She typed in and she said, okay. I said, who is that? Well, Daddy, she belongs to the Kennedy family. And she's a socialite and a newscaster. I said, is she attractive, Anaya? She was like, yeah, I guess. Now I said, Anaya, type in Mildred the maid. Mildred the maid? Okay, Daddy. I said, read who she is. Daddy, she had a baby by Arnold Schwarzenegger. I said, Anaya, the day you let a woman come in your house and cook and clean over your husband is the day you give him permission to cheat on you. Don't ever let somebody come in your house and do what you're supposed to do. And that goes for us men. Don't ever let your wife invite another man to come in the house and change her oil and put gas in her car, because that's what you're supposed to do. So see, every opportunity I got, I was teaching a lesson.
I see. So
I know. You didn't know I was gonna get all of this.
It's good though. It's good because, like I said, I want this to be informational. I want it to be valuable to the listeners, to the other girl dads, and other fathers just in general, and even the daughters. Like I said, occasionally I have daughters on, and I'm sure I have daughters listening too, because it's the girl dad podcast. So it's the dads and the daughters, and so I wanted to always be definitely sharing our stories and our, the stories of our relationships with our daughters, but then also showing, the reality of it, because the reason why we exist is the reality that there are some dads that didn't show up. You know what I'm saying? And so I want to, definitely make sure that I acknowledge both sides of that, and just to make sure that people know, like, yeah, but we are here. There are girl dads that are here. There are fathers that are very active in the lives of our children, our sons and our daughters, So we're going to switch it up a little bit, right? And so we're going to go into the next segment of the podcast, which is called the Getting to the Core segment. And for my listeners, the Getting to this Core segment is a segment that is based off of the ebook that I wrote, The Core 4, which is the 4 core values that every daughter should get from her father. Right. And you guys can get your copy of the Core 4 at ebooks.ejames.com. If you don't remember it, it'll be in the descriptions. You go into the description, just click the link and it'll take you right there. And so we talked about it a little bit before we started recording. But the 4 core values are guidance, affirmations, love and affection, and protection. And so for you as a dad, which one, all of them are important, but which one was more important to you as a value that you instilled in your daughter?
Guidance, love and affection, affirmation, and protection. All 4. I've learned that a pie needs all pieces. I've learned that a whole person has to have all 8 dimensions. If you take away one of those dimensions, it's not whole. You came up with a fantastic concept of all 4, because you got to have all of those elements to make that holistic person. You cannot be without affection. You cannot be without the love. You cannot be without the guidance. And if you listen to my interview with you now, we'll touch upon all of them. And as a father, it's very important to instill all of them, all of those elements. Now, and then they come with an ebb and flow. Sometimes I got to be more affectionate than protective. Sometimes I got to be give more guidance then affirmation. But at some point, all of them have to play a part. So I can't get rid of none of them.
Right.
Now, if you ask me what stands out the most, especially as a father of a daughter, man, love and affection. Because women crave those two more than anything. And remember, I said earlier, as the first love of her life, if you mess that up, it sets a tone, and she'll be looking for that love and affection from what? Every man that walks in front of her. And remember, and this is the important piece, daddy's love is different than a romantic love. Daddy love is unconditional. Daddy's love is guidance, love and affection, affirmation, and protection. But it's different because your husband or man or whatever, or spouse can give you those same things. But from a daddy's perspective and vantage point, it's based on, I love you because you're breathing. But if I don't instill that in you, you'll walk around thirsty. You'll walk around hungry for it. And then you'll be vulnerable to every man who appears, not gives, but appear to give it to you. Brother, I've been on the phone for the last 24 hours talking to 5 different women about bad choices in men. And all of them have the same foundation. I desire love and affection from a man. And I'm telling them over and over, love you first. If you have the best romantic love with you, then you'll see clearly his intentions. But if you don't even love you, you'll be vulnerable to whatever crumbs he gives you. So I'm going to share something with you, Ernest. At 10 years old, I told my daughter, and people are going to be mad at me, and I could care less, because I know I raised the next Michelle Obama. All men cheat. And when I say that in different podcasts, and I've been in different relationship chats, the audience does this. And men get mad, and women like, no. Ernest, I'm going to ask you the question I asked all of them. Ernest, if I told you take out a pen and paper and name me one man who you know without the shadow of a doubt has never cheated, write his name down. And then I want you to take another sheet of paper and write out 30 men who you know who have cheated. Which one would be the easiest list for you to come up with?
Well, the one person would be, and that's because that one person is me. So okay. I can do that one. But
you're not. I'm not telling you for you. I said somebody right. You know of.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say though, because even on the other side, for me personally, just because the way that I am, they say birds of a feather flock together. So there are some people and things that I just like, okay, I don't associate with them. So I couldn't even name you 30. I probably can name you 3 or 4 that I know, but definitely I can't name you 30.
See, this is the difference. You do know 30 men. You just said, though, I don't associate with them. But you can name me 30 men that you know, even if it's been in a barbershop, even if it's been, if I don't know if you belong to a fraternity or you go to football games. You know there's 30 men who won't cheat it. The point I'm making is society has made it very easy for us to cheat and not be dedicated. And me saying all men cheat, what people don't understand is I'm saying men, meaning women and men. And basically what I'm saying with that concept is we all are subject to cheat. The reason why I taught my daughter that early on is because, Anaya, just because you're tan brown, just because your hair is down to the middle of your back, just because you're 5'9" and 130 pounds and looks like a fashion model, don't ever think that a man would look at you and like, I won't cheat on her. I said, look at Beyonce. Look at Halle Berry. Look at Janet Jackson. Look at any woman who you think is beautiful, and she'll tell you a story of a man cheating on her. Baby, be prepared to love you first. Because if you put your love and faith in man, you'll be disappointed every time. So again, as a dad, that message had to come from me because I know men, because I'm one of them. Mm-hmm. And Ernest, I've never cheated. I've never cheated because I had to see mom and grandma and aunties and girl cousins get cheated on. So it told me, don't be that dude. But I'm still clear they out here.
Yeah.
And they're going to target our daughters. They're going to target our daughters. And they will work harder with our daughters. Why, Ernest? Because our daughters had a frame of reference, us. Mm-hmm. And men like challenges. Oh, she think because she grew up with a daddy that she ain't subject to what I'll do to other women. Now I'm going to work on breaking her down a little bit more. So see, as a social worker, I live in reality.
Right.
I live in reality. Ernest, I knew I wanted my daughter to go to an Ivy League school. One of the reasons why she knows another language, one of the reasons why she's traveled all over the world, because when she went to Amherst, it wasn't us in the classroom. It was all the other races. And now my daughter can sit at the same table with Bethany Frankenstein, and she can sit with Shakira Sharif, and she can sit at the table with Ahmed Shakur, and she can sit at the table with Kim Lucy and say, yeah, I got the same experiences as you all have. I'm not just another black girl from the south side of Chicago. That's what we owe our kids. Because competition is fierce out here.
Definitely. Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. So last question before we get out of here. Last question. Excuse me. So we definitely know that all four of the core four values is definitely important. But I always ask if there could be a fifth value that we could add to those values that you could add, what would that fifth value be?
Self-love.
And I was going to say that. I was going to say that from everything I was listening to you, but I wanted you to say it. But go ahead.
Self-love. If we teach our daughters how to love themselves, good days, bad days, positive and negative, when the sun is shining or when there's a rainstorm, that my goodness, you will always expect the best. You will always expect the best because you know what you're capable of. Even if you're in a room full of negative people, if you're the person with the sunshine over your head, you will illuminate. Man, you got to know, I see the worst in people every day I go to work. I'm a social worker. Mm-hmm. I've had to sit in the rooms with pedophiles, domestic violence batterers and victims, sexual abuse victims, drug addicts, people out from incarceration. So I know what bad looks like. But not only have I won 5 Father of the Year awards, I've won 27 social worker awards. Because through all that, I still see the goodness in people. And me, as a social worker, I have to teach people, guess what? How to love themselves. So if we teach our children self-love, man, come on. I might be jobless then. But until that happens, I'm going to always make my money.
Got to go to work.
I want to make my money because people are in despair. Yeah. And I got a waiting list at my private practice right now, a waiting list. But I want to say that's something with that too. In the private practice, I have 14 male clients. Do you hear me? Now, the reason why that's significant, prior to the pandemic, you couldn't get Black men to come into therapy. unless somebody was emotionally blackmailing them or they was mandated to come.
Mm-hmm.
Now I got men calling me, sir, do you have space for therapy? I want to get into therapy. Men. So the tide is turning, Ernest. The tide is turning.
Mm-hmm.
We're learning that I got to fix this. See, for us black men from the neck down, we got that down pat. We got the best bodies in the world. We're the greatest athletes. But it doesn't matter if you got the arms and the chest and the six pack and the thighs and the calves. If this is weak. So I'm helping men build better. I'm helping men build this muscle better. That's my answer.
Yeah. Man, I appreciate you so much, man, for being on, because you definitely dropped a lot of knowledge. You know what I'm saying? A lot of knowledge, a lot of wisdom in this episode. I want you to have the last word, and I want you to leave us with, I don't know, a word of advice, a word of inspiration, however you feel, for the dads or even for the daughters out there. Who may be listening, I want you to leave us with something to carry us out, as well as your social media handles and even where they can find you at, to for those men who may be looking for your services to be able to contact you. So I'll give you a second to think about that. To my listeners, thank you guys once again for tuning in to the Girl Dad Discussions podcast. If you guys like the podcast and you thought about starting your own podcast, make sure you guys get your copy of the Start Your Podcast Now ebook, which is also available at ebooksbyejames.com. I wrote this ebook because I kept being asked how to start a podcast. And not only do I know that it's good, but I know it works because I've turned it into a workshop that I'm teaching high school students and middle school students to start their own podcast right now, even in Chicago. So if you thought about starting your own podcast, get your copy of the Start Your Podcast Now ebook that's available at ebooksbyejames.com. Also, make sure that you check out my main website, which is the dealhealfulfill.org. It's dealhealfulfill.org, because my mission as a podcaster, as a speaker, and as an author is to help people to heal, and fulfill, to deal with your problems, to heal from the pain, and to fulfill your purpose. So make sure you guys check that out. On the website, you can find more about what I have going on, my podcast workshops, even what you can even book me to come out to speak at your next event or to facilitate a workshop for you. So make sure you go to dealhealfulfill.org in order to check that out. Also, again, go to ebooksbyejames.com so you can get your copy of the Core 4, which is the 4 core values that every daughter should get from her father, as well as the Start Your Podcast Now ebook. But there's also 2 other ebooks that are there. I have a male mentoring ebook called From Males to Men, and I have an ebook called Forgiving Me, the 4 Steps to Self-Forgiveness. All of those are available at ebooksbyejames.com. Make sure you guys go there and check that out. Also, Deal to Heal Tees. Deal, the number 2, healtees.com. Deal to healtees.com, which is our inspirational t-shirt line. Put some inspiration in your situation. Wear an inspirational tee and be inspired all day. That is our tagline. Again, that's Deal, the number 2, healtees.com. Not only do we have our inspirational t-shirts there, but we also have our podcast t-shirts there, which is our t-shirts with our podcast logos on it. So you can get your t-shirt with the podcast logo of the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast, as well as the Girl Dad Discussions podcast at Deal, the number 2, healtees.com. And last but not least, over the last couple of years, I've been blessed to be a part of an organization called the Forgiveness Mission. And what we do, we have free virtual workshops every other month talking about everything surrounding forgiveness, what forgiveness is, who forgiveness is for, what it means to forgive, forgiveness of self, forgiveness of others. Everything surrounding forgiveness is absolutely free. but the information is priceless. So make sure you guys go to forgivenessmission.com to sign up for the next workshop, or you can go to Eventbrite and look up Forgiveness Workshop held by the Forgiveness Mission on Eventbrite in order to register that way. So whenever you're listening to this podcast, either one workshop just ended or is one coming up. So again, go to forgivenessmission.com to sign up for the free virtual workshop on forgiveness. So again, I want to say, Mr. Scott, thank you so very much for being on. Thank you for giving us your experience and the advice of being a great father, great girl dad that you are. I really appreciate you being on. I want you to have the last word, so the floor is yours.
All right. Well, first of all, I am so impressed by you, Ernest. You know, this is our first time meeting. And, you know, when I do these podcasts, normally they're with women. Because, you know, women, they take the ball and run with it. And it's only been a handful of men who have said, you know what, let me get into this arena and really make it impactful. So not only with the podcast, but your ebooks, I am truly impressed. And it's great to meet another girl dad, you know. So I tip my hat off to you, brother. Absolutely.
Thank you.
My ending message is this. Again, this is my pride and joy being Anaya's dad. And I want the message tonight to be this. Not sure if everybody is religious or spiritual or what have you, or believe in a higher power. But if you do, I hope this is very impactful. We belong to God. And God rents us out to our parents. He has them create us, but he's really our father. Mm-hmm. But on earth, he puts us in place. And I really want people to think about parenting as that. This was a God's mission. And if you really know that it's God's mission, you don't take it lightly. You take it very serious and you give it your best. I know men who are fantastic at their jobs, but horrible parents. I know women who can do everything else, but horrible parents. And I've seen them because of the work I do. Sometimes the kids become wonderful human beings, sometimes, or a whole lot of times they don't. But I want everybody listening right now, whether you have a small child, 2 weeks old, or you got an older child who's 40 years old and even older than that, always be the best parent. Always show up as the best parent that you know how to be. And even if you think you have deficits from how you were parented, break that cycle, break that mold, break that curse, and be better. I did. Again, never a daddy one day of my life. But I'm pretty sure if you asked Anaya Kathleen Scott, how is her dad, I think I would have flying colors and approval ratings. And that's what I want to leave your audience with. Be the best parent that you can be, and the rest will happen. And thank you again, Ernest, for having me.
No problem. Thank you for being on, man. We can't end it no better than that. To my listeners, thank you guys once again for tuning in to the Girl Dad Discussions podcast, where our mission is to combat the narrative of the absent father and the fatherless daughter by promoting the voices of girl dads to the world. So until next time, you guys be blessed. Thanks for listening to the Girl Dad Discussions podcast with E. James. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and subscribe to our podcast on all your podcast listening platforms. Also, don't keep it to yourself, but share it with someone else. That the Girl Dad Discussions podcast is on the air. Until next time, be blessed.